Okay, we're starting off our Hellraiser series, kind of doing them by twos. So this is episode 38 of the Clive Barker podcast. Jose and I and our guest that you may recognize, he's been on before, Jonathan Kui, we talked about for this first one, Hellraiser 1 and 2. So then, of course, and it was fun. We ended up talking a lot more about Hellraiser 2 than Hellraiser 1. I think mainly because we've talked about Hellraiser so much already. In Hellraiser 2 we haven't really talked much about at all, and there's a lot of interesting kind of puzzling things about, I guess that's sort of a pun, but yeah, puzzling things about Hellraiser 2. I think we kind of all agree it's the best sequel of all of them. Anyway, this was episode 38 of the Clive Barker podcast, Hellraiser 1 and 2. Welcome to the Clive Barker podcast. This is episode 38. I'm Brian Danhauser, and
I'm Jose Leitao. Hi, guys.
And later on, we'll be joined by Jonathan Kui, who's kind of our Hellraiser expert. And but for right now, we'll go into the Clive Barker news. The first one's Sex, Death, and Starshine. The Books of Blood story is going to appear in Mammoth Book of Zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And I've owned a Mammoth Book of Zombies in the past. They're huge, and after a while it gets to be a little much. I think, all of those zombie stories in a row, but
yeah,
that's cool. I mean, it's more money for Clive Barker, so I think that's great.
Wonderful. I guess that's supposed to be read in moderation, I guess. You're supposed to pick up the book and say, okay, I'll just read a couple of stories, and then next week you'll read another couple. If you start from cover to cover, I'm guessing it's going to be really too much. I had once a Frankenstein, what was it called? A Frankenstein...
Oh, a Mammoth Book of Frankenstein?
It wasn't the Mammoth Book. It was something like the Frankenstein Compendium or something. And it was this huge book, and it had all these stories about Frankenstein, and like the original screenplay of the Broadway play, and then the original screenplay of the movie, and it had stories by, I don't know, Isaac Asimov or something, and a bunch of stories about Frankenstein or topics that dealt with it. And I was like, I read that stuff from I was reading that through, and I was getting saturated with Frankenstein. I was like dreaming about Frankenstein. I'm like, I'll just give it a few weeks and then I'll get back to it, because it is too much.
Yeah. I mean, obviously our first preference would be to get the Books of Blood. I mean, that makes the most sense if you're one of our listeners.
Yeah.
But I think this is good news too. And sometimes these anthologies are fun because you read stuff that you otherwise wouldn't have come across your path.
Oh yes, gosh. Once I found so many good writers reading anthologies. That's a great way to find new writers. Yeah, absolutely.
And the next thing in the news, Mark Miller did a little interview with Phil and Sarah from clivebarker.info, talking about the comic project Next Testament, which I believe is set to come out next month, right? I think it's going to be in May.
Yeah. It's that one where God comes to Earth, and he's just like a regular guy.
And it's kind of hinted that, be careful what you wish for. Everybody wants to meet God, and then they meet him, and it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah. It reminds me of that, was it Sharon Osbourne? No, it wasn't Sharon Osbourne. But it was some music from the 90s that was, What If God Was One of Us?
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Just a slob like one of us.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Yep. And then in Occupy Media news, there's going to be another screening of the Cabal Cut in Erie, Pennsylvania on October 18th at the Erie Horror Fest.
Yay!
Yeah, and there's lots of other screenings in the works, but that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. I'm planning for the Portland, Oregon one.
Me too. I actually, so far, all I've bought, I've been working on it today, and all I bought so far is a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle so that I can visit my family when it's over.
Yeah.
A train ticket, I mean.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I plan on going and buying the plane tickets and stuff after, when we're done recording.
Do we know what day is it going to be? The screening is going to be?
Well, Russell told me he thinks Friday and Saturday. I saw other people on Occupy Midian saying the website says Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe for sure that it's 2 showings, but...
So Saturday for sure, I guess.
Yeah, I need to look, because I'm going to base my plane tickets on that, so...
Of course, yeah.
I might just fly to Portland on Thursday and leave, and we're leaving by train on Monday.
Okay.
And that'll give us, if we got extra time, then we have family in Oregon too, so...
I'm still a little shaky on the whole holidays in America. Is that any time near... any kind of holidays that's coming up in May, like Memorial Day?
No. Memorial Day is the end of May, but Mother's Day is the second Sunday in May.
Oh, okay.
So that's and that's going to be on my birthday on the 12th.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
So that's why we're taking time after the screening to go up to Seattle and visit my family and stuff. Perfect. And I'm hoping that they'll give me money to help reimburse me for my plane ticket.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. So, check out the Cabal Cut in Erie, Pennsylvania at the Erie Horror Fest in October.
Yep. And we saw hints of other ones that Russell's working out right now. Mm-hmm. And I think working out the screenings is a little bit more complicated because Morgan Creek is involved in it again. So it's not as simple as just setting them up and as long as the venue's okay, then we're cool. They have to run. They need to run them by the studio because now, as we're getting closer to the release of the movie, the studio's more involved. So obviously that's a good thing because that means that it's becoming a reality. It makes it a little more complicated.
Yeah, well, since the start, they had to be individually approved, and it really hasn't changed. And now that they have to safeguard...
There was a time when they said you've got blanket approval to do whatever screenings you want to do.
Yes, that's true, yeah. That's true. But anyway, check it out. You have a lot of time to make arrangements for that because it's just in October 18, so think about it.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, we're doing fine. Thanks for joining us.
I'm delighted to be joining you guys. It's great to hear your voices.
Yeah.
Yay. Yeah, we haven't talked to you since you were driving to Canada.
Yeah, that was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so just joining us now is Jonathan Kui.
Hi, gentlemen. How are you?
Oh, we're doing fine.
Good.
Thanks for joining us. Jonathan is he made a couple of Hellraiser fan films, Hellraiser Prophecy and Hellraiser
Winter's Lament.
Yeah, Hellraiser Dead or Winter's Lament. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. We are looking forward to this discussion on the Hellraiser movies, 1 and 2.
Hellraiser 1 and 2, yeah.
I've always wanted to quote this, so let me just say that I'm clammy-palmed with anticipation of total failure.
All right. Cool.
Everyone should get that quote. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to start by asking, when did you guys first saw Hellraiser?
Ryan?
Well, actually, I saw Nightbreed first. A friend of mine had rented Nightbreed, and I got really into Clive Barker, and I was going to go rent Hellraiser and watch that, and a different friend of mine said, Hellraiser 1 is boring. It's all just in a house. You should rent Hellraiser 2. So I saw Hellraiser 2 first before I went back and saw Hellraiser 1.
Oh. Okay.
So this would have been like 1990, I think.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Were you confused because you didn't see the first one?
Well, they spend like 15 minutes explaining what happened in the first movie.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I guess my first experience with Hellraiser was this was also in the late 80s, or maybe it was 1990. And I was flipping through channels on the TV, and I happened to have this Spanish channel that I was flipping through at the time, and I saw a bit of Hellraiser, and it was like Frank, skinless Frank, at the top of the stairway saying, you know, Kirsty, come to Daddy, it's Uncle Frank. And I was like, what the hell is going on in this movie? And, of course, it was dubbed in Spanish because it was a Spanish channel. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. And I was too young to see the movie at the time, so I couldn't really rent it or anything because it came out in 87, right? And 87, I was like 12. So, okay, the next time I saw Hellraiser was when my brother rented it. My older brother, and he actually brought the movie home, and he saw the movie. He was like, you have to go to your bedroom because you can't watch this movie. It's not for your age. And I'm like, okay. But then I kind of like sneaked into the living room, and I was like, oh, you know, what are you watching? So I ended up watching the movie. And then the first time I saw the movie in the big screen was in the fantastic film festival Fantasporto, which takes place in Oporto, Portugal. And that's the first time I saw the movie in the big screen. And I saw a double feature, Hellraiser 1 and 2. That was great. Of course, by that time I had already seen Hellraiser 2 in video. But that was the first time I saw it in the big screen. And what was
Did it have Portuguese subtitles?
Yes, it had Portuguese subtitles. So that was awesome. And all the times that I've seen Hellraiser 1 in the theater, I think it's always been the same copy. Honestly, I think Portugal probably just has the same copy going back and forth.
That just kind of makes its way around the theaters.
Yeah, and then, of course, I bought the VHS, and I bought the VHS rental version because it never came out in direct sale. Hellraiser 1 and 2 never came out in DVD or anything. So basically what I did was I had this friend that worked at a video club, video store, and when the VHSs went out of circulation, like, okay, he was like, are you interested in buying the tapes? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll buy them. So I bought them. So that was it. That was my first contact with Hellraiser, was dubbed in Spanish at night, late on TV in a Spanish channel.
Nice.
The first version of it that I bought was the Laserdisc, the full screen Laserdisc.
Yeah.
And then later I bought that 2-tape VHS, but I hated VHS.
Yeah.
Like, I had a Laserdisc player, since the early 80s. And so we always, videotapes were sort of, scummy things that you bought if you couldn't get it on Laserdisc.
Okay.
But, yeah, I had the 2-tape VHS, and then later the box set, and then the tin, the DVD tin, and then the Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah. So what about you, Johnny?
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, my first Hellraiser was actually Hellraiser 3 on VHS. What happened was, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and my friends and I were watching Deep Space Nine, and one of my friends had a thing for Terry Farrell, who, of course, was the lead in Hellraiser 3. So I actually ended up starting out with the third Hellraiser, watched it, and then went back and saw the first two on VHS as well. So this must have been after 3 was released on VHS, which was probably late 92 or early 93. So after watching Hellraiser 1 and 2, I absolutely fell in love with Hellraiser 2. And it just added, watching Hellraiser 2 added so much more to the first Hellraiser that it taken together, it was just an incredible experience. So I, went out and bought the VHSs, and I guess the rest is history. That was pretty much where it all started for me.
Yeah. Hellraiser 3, I also only found out when I went to the video store one day and I saw it there, and I was like, oh, wow, there's another Hellraiser. I miss those days of blissful ignorance when you didn't know what was going to come out. Not like today when, you know everything about the movie a year before it's being filmed or anything, and then you know all the development hell that goes through and all that stuff. But that's a pretty cool story. I also tend to think of Hellraiser 1 and 2 as just as a perfect double feature. I hardly ever watch the first one that I don't watch the second one next. So in fact,
did you guys do you guys have the high definition of Hellraiser 1?
Yeah.
In the height of DVD, the remastered DVD. I'm embarrassed to say I get to pick up the Blu-ray, but that's definitely on the list.
Well, some little things because I watched we just got a 55-inch TV and I just watched it in high definition, and some cool things that you could pick up. I never noticed that you could see the face of the guy who sells Kircher, who sells the box to Frank.
You never noticed?
Oh, isn't it knocked out of frame, really?
Well, no, it wasn't out of frame. He was just dark.
Oh, okay.
But now you can kind of make out that it looks like it's a Chinese guy.
Yeah, in the first movie, in the first Hellraiser. Okay, this might sound weird, but I always saw the face of the guy. So.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just
actually.
I just didn't notice.
Yeah.
And then also I noticed it was a lot easier to see the wood grain on the puzzle box.
Oh yeah.
Where I had always just kind of assumed that it was black underneath.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's black on two of the faces, and then on the rest you can see the wood grain. The top faces, the top and bottom faces, you have the little circle thing.
Circles?
Yeah, that part has been stained black underneath. But the other ones you can...
Unless you get the old plastic Screamin' model.
Yeah. I had one of those and it fell on the floor and exploded, so I don't have that anymore.
Oh, well.
Did chains burst out, or?
No.
You were lucky.
No, but Pinhead went, no!
Nice.
In preparation for this, I saw both Hellraisers with commentary tracks, and one of them, the second one, Hellbound, I saw it on the big screen TV also. I saw the Blu-ray version, and I saw it on 3D because this TV has a little button you can click, and it switches everything to 3D. And I watched it with those real 3D glasses. So that was cool. Watching Hellbound in 3D was awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. It does it in real time.
When you have the spinning pillar, did that really come out nice in 3D? Or?
Oh, yeah. It works pretty well. It does the immediate transition of 2D to 3D. It must be using some kind of algorithms. So it's an LG TV. I'm not This is not a sponsor of the Clive Barker podcast, but it's an LG.
Well, no, now they have to send us money.
Yeah, and it has the 3D automatic 3D setting, which you just click the button, boom, it gets in 3D. You put on the glasses, and that's it. So that was amazing. I mean, it worked pretty well. I was like, oh wow, looking at Chenard fly and Leviathan twirl and all that stuff. That was
one thing I would recommend is if you watch Hellraiser on the Blu-ray. And you turn on the audio commentary, there's also a little setting that you can do that's called film facts.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that, because all it does is it puts a little square on the screen that just reiterates what they're talking about during the audio commentary.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be like Clive Barker thinks that or thinks that this scene could have been done differently, or something like that, right while he's saying it. So it's just crap that's covering up the screen, really, is all it is.
Yeah.
Has there only been one Blu-ray edition released at this point, or are there like?
Yeah, I think just one, as far as I know. I mean, at least in the U.S.
Well, I think that there's a single transfer that's been used, but there's been others. There's been there's a Blu-ray of all four films, like 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 4, and 5. There's a Blu-ray with all four movies. And there's also a couple of collections that include Blu-rays of Hellraiser. But I'm guessing it's the same thing. It's basically the same disc.
Not in the U.S., not that I've seen.
Really?
I mean, I've seen the sequels all jammed together on collections, but I've never seen Hellraiser 1 put on those.
Okay, well... I
think that they can sell... Hellraiser 1 sells so well by itself that it doesn't really need to get crammed in with the...
Yeah, what's important is that fans out there see it in HD, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. I did kind of notice that the blood on Julia's skin, after she was hammering people, looked a little pinkish in high definition, and I don't know if that had to do with the way that it was transferred to the Blu-ray, or maybe that was, the reality of the, 1987.
Well, sometimes, the TV mode can also have, something to do. You got like sports, cinema, user.
Oh, I know.
So, but whenever they do that transfer, they have to clean it up, and sometimes they boost the levels, and sometimes it works, and other times it just gets a little weird.
Yeah.
So, Hellbound is a little grainy on the Blu-ray in some parts, especially
a little. Yeah, well, Hellbound is a little bit of a darker movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I think it's a lot of like blue and gray and.
Yeah, it's got wonderful colors in the scenes where Julia is walking into the labyrinth with Chenard, and you see these bright greens and reds and blues coming through the.
Oh yeah, shining on their faces and stuff.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So go ahead, Johnny.
Oh, sorry. Does the Blu-ray have that behind the scenes effects montage from Hellraiser 2 that was on the old VHS sets?
I don't think no. It just has one featurette. Well, actually, the DVD just has one featurette that was like Behind the Labyrinth.
Right.
And but the Blu-ray's got nothing.
I think that featurette is lost in the labyrinth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Blu-ray for Hellbound doesn't even have a menu.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. You if you want to. Yeah. That's right.
I think, but still, one of the most definitive sets is not in HD, and that's the Anchor Bay box set with the
box tin.
Yeah. You got that one, Johnny?
Oh, with the puzzle box.
The box tin. Yeah, that was a fun set. The booklet was wonderful because it really had some great pictures, particularly the then and now shot of Clive Barker with Ashley Lawrence. That was pretty nice.
Yeah.
I bought the DVD. I bought the Anchor Bay tin that had Hellraiser 1 and 2, but when the puzzle box one came out, I kept saying, "Well, where's the Blu-ray version?" And they never did it.
Yeah, I have the little lament configuration box from Anchor Bay. It's got like Hellraiser 1, 2, 3, and then 3 is in 2 discs because there's a widescreen version and a full screen version.
Yeah, right.
So,
nice.
Yeah,
in the tin, Hellraiser 1 and 2 both give you the choice of widescreen or full screen, but I don't know why anyone would watch something on full screen anymore.
That's true.
It seems like a waste of effort to make a movie in pan and scan anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Hellraiser 1, I mean, we talked about it so much, especially when we were doing the episode about the Hellbound Heart, and we inevitably had to compare it to the movie. And we basically it is what it is. It is a Faustian tale. Yeah. The script was written by Clive Barker, and it was his first feature film. And it's everybody thinks that at the end of the movie the house is meant to burn down for some reason. I remember explaining it to some people that no, on the second movie the house is still standing. Because a lot of people have this impression at the end of Hellraiser 1 that because you see the house lights up from the inside and you see a picture of Frank burning up, and then it cuts to Kirsty and Trevor. Trevor.
In like a wasteland. Yeah.
In a wasteland with a burning chair there and some burning things. So everybody thinks that the house burned down. And I'm not really sure to this day if that was meant to be, if that was meant to be the conveyed idea or not, but because at the time they didn't really think about doing a sequel. They didn't know how the movie was going to be received. So when it became a huge hit, it had like billboards of Pinhead going like 50 feet high in Japan or something.
Yeah.
And it was that's when they decided let's do a sequel. But yeah,
I think that Claire Higgins' performance is amazing. I mean, just watching it again this time, I was studying it pretty closely, and like when they first move into the house, and now they've seen Frank's junk in the attic.
Yeah. And
once he said that, it looks like it was Frank, and he made one of his famous getaways.
Yeah.
And then later on downstairs, he says, "Well," and Julia says, "Why not?" And she's sort of happy. And he's thinking, oh, great, she's finally warmed up to the idea. But really, it's like she's thinking maybe Frank will come back.
I never really thought about it. That might be implied in the scene. Yeah, good catch.
And I think there's a lot of really little subtle things in their performances that are like, just some kind of dramatic irony of things that, and just things that we know on a, second or 100th viewing of Hellraiser.
Yeah, one of the really cool things that I thought was when they gave Frank this huge back tattoo, and you see that kind of unfold as he's making love to Julia, or rather having sex with Julia, because that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And you see that back tattoo unfurl in a close-up. That's a great shot right there. And of course, Julia was meant to come back after Hellraiser 2. Julia was meant to become the main villain, but then she decided not to get typecast, and she wanted to do other things, so she moved on.
Well, and they also kind of discovered after Hellraiser, because they were working on Hellraiser 2 before Hellraiser 1 even had come out, or at least the script, and they discovered after Hellraiser 1 came out that Pinhead really was what everybody responded to the most.
Yeah, that's true. So,
and that's true. The films only came out about a year apart, wasn't it? It was like 87 was Hellraiser, and Hellbound was 88.
Yes, that is true. Yeah. So they
I have a question. Do you guys think that a film like Hellraiser, where probably in terms of characters the most iconic image of Pinhead, like any horror film where the main character, the main villain, doesn't appear until more than an hour into the film, it works well with Hellraiser, but do you think a film like that could be made today?
It also worked really well with Alien.
Yeah, and Saw.
Alien, you just listen to a bunch of space truckers arguing with each other for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
and then it's just crazy horror.
Yeah, but Alien is also from around the same time as Hellraiser, right?
Yeah, it was about 8 years.
Well, 79.
Yeah, 79. So, so a long time before. I don't know. That's a good point, Johnny, because I think nowadays people want things to move faster in the movies. So they want, if there's a monster showing up, they want the monster to be, showing up really quickly. So they want to maximize. It's more a thing of maximizing the screen time of the monster so it becomes iconic.
Yeah, and studio pressure. I mean, look at Hellraiser 4. They forced them to put Pinhead right in the beginning. Like, that outer space scene was supposed to happen chronologically, right? But they stuck it right in the very beginning because they're like, hey, we've got a long time without seeing Pinhead. What's going on?
Yeah, and they immediately give you that initial scare in Hellraiser 4 when the movie's just starting, and in the first few seconds you get you see Pinhead show up just for a brief flash. Even before
and he kills a robot.
And he kills a robot. That's true. But Hellraiser 1, I think one of the things that really worked for the Cenobites was their costumes, which were designed by Jane Wildgoose, and she was a friend of Clive's, and he gave her some magazines, some PFIQ magazines, which were Piercing Fans International Quarterly. And he gave her some PFIQ magazines and said, look at this and see what you can come up with. And that's how she came up with the whole idea of the Cenobites' garb and leather and piercings and all that stuff. So that was really cool. And the box.
Speaking of the Cenobites, so I think one of the other things that really made this film work so well was the fact that it was able to carry two very highly developed storylines, which really didn't intersect all that much until well further in. I mean, really, we've got that whole Julia, Larry, Kirsty storyline, which really proceeds very well and is really the main story for almost the entire film. And subtext is the Frank at the beginning with the Cenobites, and it kind of veers away from there until it, intersects the other storyline like a car accident. It's just both storylines are so well developed, and there's really so much tension in both stories that it's just really fantastic how it was able to pull that off.
Yeah, they're kind of a screwed up, dysfunctional family, and really, that's the main thing, and that's kind of what drives the story. But also the fact that they've sort of moved into a haunted house.
Yeah. So
it's not how you would traditionally think of a haunted house, but that's kind of the deal.
Yeah. So it gets a lot of tropes from different kinds of movies in there. Yeah. So where does this take place? I mean, that's one of the things that it's not immediately clear, which kind of makes it a place that can be anywhere. I mean, because originally the people at the party, when they're having a housewarming party, they spoke with a British accent, and they were redubbed in post-production. And
yeah.
And in the second movie, you actually see policemen holding guns, and they look like American policemen. So that's when it crystallizes the idea that this takes place in the United States. The house of Ludovico Street is in the United States. They just never really mention where it is.
Well, I've heard that argument in, like, even, that they wanted to make it ambiguous so that it would resonate with American audiences.
Right.
But, the more I watch Hellraiser 1, the more I think a lot of the dubbing choices were just done to make sense, right? Because you can't have Larry, who's an American, having a brother who's got a British accent.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, but he does say, he does talk, he says, well, Julia says, well, I suppose it's better than Brooklyn. So the idea, and he says, well, you've got a new job or I've got a new job and you're back on your own turf. So it's kind of like we used to live in New York, but now we moved to England. So this is your home. So you should be happy here. And then also, Kirsty, that her boyfriend dude, what's his face, Steve?
Yeah.
They're having this conversation, when the bum is like peering out at them and they're walking down the street.
Uh-huh.
And she's talking about how British people, she doesn't say British people are like also polite and
That's
frigid.
true.
And he's like, no, we're not all frigid.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's why the first movie, I have this idea that it takes place in England. And then,
I think it does take place in England, and just some choices were made. But then also you got like Kirsty when she passes out, and all these people are peering down at her. One of them's a guy with a Yankees baseball cap.
Yeah, the one that says, "Are you all right?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another. It's funny when you mentioned the bum, which we now mostly the Hellraiser fans refer to him as the Puzzle Guardian, but the bum. To this day, some people think that was Clive Barker, and it's not. Yeah, there's actually in the credits it says his name there, so it's not Clive Barker. But that's a rather mysterious character.
I mean, you've got to kind of hand it to Clive Barker. He doesn't put himself in cameos in any of his movies.
That's true. Yeah.
He does cameos for other people when they ask him to, but he doesn't do it when he's directing.
Yeah. But I was listening to the commentary track on Hellraiser 2, and that matter of the location came up. And Peter Atkins and Tony Randell, who was the director of Hellbound, they were discussing that, to this day, some fans come and they question why are the cops in Hellraiser 2 holding guns? Aren't they supposed to be in England? And they have to explain.
And they're definitely Americans. I mean, they have American accents, and one of them shoots up one of the corpses because it falls on him.
Yes. And
little accidental damage.
Yeah, accidental damage. Officer Kasich, something like that.
Yeah.
But yes, Sean Chapman was dubbed indeed in the first movie, but for the second one, he actually used his own voice, and he did a pretty good American accent.
Yeah, well, and it was kind of cool because he made his voice sort of sound like the Skinless Frank voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
I didn't mind that at all. I thought that was good.
Yeah, because Frank was played by three different people in the first movie. It was played by
Sean Chapman.
When he's got his skin on. He was played by Oliver Smith when he's Frank the Monster. And it was played by the guy who plays Larry, Andy Robinson.
Oh, yeah, of course. Right.
So it ended up being played by three people. And for the second movie, I have some questions about Frank, which I would like to know what you guys think. When Kirsty goes into hell and she finds the door of Ludovico Street and she walks in, she finds this kind of dresser full of makeup stuff, and then she meets Frank. When that happens, after she throws the sheet on the candles and it starts burning up the place, you see that Frank goes through a certain transformation, and it's like the makeup that he had on was melting, or was it really his skin? I never really understood that, because it seemed to me like he was trying to make himself look human again with makeup. And then when the fire hits him, it melts away and he becomes like Skinless Frank again. So,
well, he yells, "Not my face!" Right?
yeah.
And right when the picture of him is burning up, and it's kind of almost like a voodoo thing, like the burning up picture makes his skin burn up. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's strange.
And there's a bunch of makeup on top of the table. There's lipsticks, there's like powder, there's like brushes, and there's a picture of him, which I always assumed he was trying to make himself look like he did when he was human.
I never thought of that. I always thought that he just had the loose skin like Hellraiser people do that's, comes off really easily.
Yeah. What did you think?
I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. What did you
I
think?
suppose I always just kind of took it for granted. I mean, I assumed that because of what he had done, he was in hell, and Leviathan and the Labyrinth probably presented him with these things, remind him of a vanity, his own vanity that could never really be sated. Kind of a constant reminder of, the attractiveness that he once had that could never permanently achieve again. The mechanism by which, that happened, I'm not entirely sure, but that was just kind of, how I just took it.
Yeah, that sounds like a good interpretation there. And it was supposed to be a much, much different movie from what we got, Hellbound. It was supposed to be a movie where Kirsty would find...
Are we switching into Hellraiser 2 right now?
Oh, yeah, I kind of go back and forth. Well, do you have anything else about Hellraiser? Go ahead.
Have any of you heard any of the original? I don't even think they're available, but any of the original audio track that was recorded with Sean Chapman, like before he was dubbed?
I saw some of it on a trailer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's an international trailer, which actually you can find on YouTube, I think, because I think I remember posting this the last time we talked about Hellbound Heart. And there is a trailer where you can hear the voice of Sean Chapman with his British accent and the voice of Oliver Smith as Frank the Monster.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can hear that.
So if you guys are kind of experts on Hellraiser movies, I mean, I haven't seen all the sequels a whole lot of times, but the puzzle box, there's one scene at the very end of Hellraiser when, she's in the middle of like sending away all of the Cenobites, and one of the corners, turns into sort of a little pyramid and twists around.
Yes.
And then the engineer comes out.
Yeah.
Has that corner twisting thing ever happened on any other movie, or is this the only time that we've ever seen that?
On Hellbound, I think it happens.
No, that was Hellraiser 1.
Yeah, but on Hellbound, that corner also twists in the box.
When she was turning it into the Leviathan shape, the diamond shape.
When Tiffany is playing with her box. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. And actually, I guess and actually that was another thing I wanted to ask you guys, if you know what the effect was when Pinhead throws the box up in the air to Tiffany and it turns into it turns into the Leviathan shape and then she catches it. Is that some kind of stop motion animation or like with a model that makes it turn that when it turns into that?
Yeah, that was an effect, right? You're talking about the effect, or are you talking about the in-world implications of that?
No, I'm talking about the effect.
No, that was like stop motion. Yeah, that was by Rory.
Oh, yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, Rory Fellows, who also worked on Nightbreed. All of these stop motion animation sequences in Hellbound were done by Rory Fellows.
Yeah.
He also did.
I mean, we know for a fact that it was stop motion, or was it some kind of animation?
No, yeah, it's stop motion. It is stop motion.
Okay.
Because it's a real object. It's just being manipulated and parts are being added and removed as it twists, and then they shot that stuff. So yeah, but the in-world implications are much more interesting that we can extrapolate on. So it's like why was Leviathan a giant cube or a giant diamond, and then it turns into a giant box when Tiffany manipulates the smaller box? That's a question that we always try to link, because this, of course, has to do with the comic books and the whole lore that was developed by fans and comic books and stories and stuff, that the box was made using the flesh of Leviathan by Le Marchand. And so whenever someone manipulates the box, they're actually also interfering with Leviathan himself.
Where did that come from?
I think that comes from the Books of the Damned comic books.
I have them, but I haven't read them yet.
Right. So they mentioned that there was this new material that Le Marchand got, which was supposed to be Flesh of Leviathan, when he made the box, and so that's always a question: that is that the connection between Tiffany manipulating the box and also causing an effect on the god Leviathan, because he does change when the box changes. So,
well, and it's interesting too. I mean, is focusing your attention on somebody an important part of it? Because, Pinhead turned the cube into the Leviathan shape, and it didn't do anything.
That's also true.
And like at the end of Hellraiser 1, Kirsty's manipulating the box and sort of pointing it at them, and it's making them go away individually.
Yeah, but at that time, Kirsty is in her house. She's not inside hell, right?
But the point is, she didn't have to do it once and it sent all of them away. She had to point it at each individual one, and it's like she had to, focus her attention on each individual Cenobite as she was sending them away, kind of like the way Tiffany was focused on Leviathan when she was changing the puzzle box.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah.
It's always hard to extrapolate direct logic out of.
Well, it is, and Leviathan was originally supposed to be some kind of a big old blobby monster.
Yeah.
Creature,
Yeah. Like I was saying, it changed a lot from the first drafts of Hellbound were very different from what we got. In the first draft, Kirsty was supposed to find her dad in hell and save him. And in fact, that has to do directly with that photograph that keeps popping up by fans everywhere with the Pinhead and, female Cenobites dressed as surgeons. And everybody goes but when are we going to get that? Are we going to get that in the Blu-ray? And it's like, no, Doug Bradley, Peter Atkins have mentioned several times that scene
never filmed.
Was never filmed. Basically, they just thought about it, but then it would be out of context with the rest of the story, because that was just the reason for that scene to be there was because it takes place at a time when Kirsty is carrying her dad from hell, and he's been cut deeply, and he is bleeding to death, and so these doctors say, "Oh, he's bleeding to death. We need to operate right now," and then the Pinhead doctor, which at the time she doesn't know it's him, and he says, we couldn't do anything. Your dad is going to die. And then when Kirsty looks at him, the pins would pop out from behind the mask, the surgeon mask, and his head would turn into Pinhead. And they just couldn't find a way at the time to do those special effects properly because they didn't have the technology or the budget. So it turns out they never really filmed it because it was hard to film. And then, of course, because the story changed, there was no point to keeping that in because Larry was no longer a part of the story.
And Tony Randall said that scene was horrible. Like, everything that they tried just looked laughably terrible.
Yeah. And
they changed the story. The reason they changed the story, that was because Andrew Robinson wasn't going to come back, correct?
Well, and it was interesting. They were negotiating with him, and he was on board. And at the very, very end, he changed his mind because they were going to pay him less than what they paid him in Hellraiser 1.
Yeah.
And they were so far into the script already that they couldn't rewrite the whole thing based on that. So they just did some edits to make it so, he wasn't in it anymore.
And also, part of the reason why some scenes were not, like, for example, we didn't get to see much of big labyrinth scenes, or we didn't get to see a lot of the footage from Leviathan is basically the same footage that they show over and over again, especially the one with the clouds in the back and the lightnings coming out of Leviathan.
Yeah.
They also lost a lot of budget for the movie, right? Because Black Monday...
20% they said they lost.
Yeah, Black Monday hit. There was a stock market crash in 1988, I think. And they lost 20% of their budget in the conversion from pounds to dollars. Yeah. So that was another reason why the movie suffered greatly in terms of special effects. But still it's pretty good. I mean, it was a movie done in the time when CGI was still not. It was still too early for good CGI effects. So even the beginning of the main credits, when you see Clive Barker's name and then it pulls away till it disappears, that was actually done using a camera on a rail and pulling away from the card. And, so there you go.
And they did the same thing on Hellraiser 2 with Tony Randall's name.
Yeah, right.
On the radio, on Elliot Spencer's radio.
Yeah.
Speaking of Elliot Spencer's radio, the Morse code at the beginning.
Yeah.
What do we know what that was translated? There was some sort of message.
Yes.
In that Morse code?
It's like a secret message that Tony Randall likes to put in his movies. It
was a phone number. I remember reading that in the.
Oh, that's right. He said somebody called him and said, "I got the message."
Yeah, it was a telephone number. I think right now it doesn't work anymore, but it was a telephone number. I read that in another interview where he actually specifically said it was a telephone number. And apparently he put that in several of his movies. Another funny bit of trivia about Morse code in Hellbound is that when Christopher Young was composing the music for the Leviathan sequences, he used these. He used these horns, and the horns are spelling out God, G-O-D, in Morse code.
Yeah, I think he said they were Tibetan horns.
Yeah, those Tibetan horns. Yeah, they're actually spelling God in Morse code. So there you go, another bit of trivia.
Well, and it was what's his? Oh, the writer. Why can't I think of his name?
Peter Atkins.
Peter Atkins, thank you. Peter Atkins said that he thought it was because he was a Christian, but I don't know. I mean, Leviathan's a god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like
He's a deity. Yeah, I would consider that. Another funny thing was recently I talked to Jeff Portis, who was from Image Animation, and I asked him a few things about the Julia makeup. Mm-hmm. Because, when Julia emerges from the mattress, she's completely skinless, and she basically devours the mental patient that cuts himself on top of the mattress, whose name was Mr. Browning. And then I asked him about the makeup, and this is what he had to say. The makeup was designed and created by Little John Cormican. The body is essentially two large pieces, a pair of legs that could be pulled on, that went down to the ankles on a Lycra bodysuit. The feet were virtually never seen, so we just painted them. And a bodysuit, again on Lycra, that covered her torso and upper arms. There was a Velcro joint between her legs that allowed for easy removal for toilet visits. The hands were skin-tight foam gloves that went up to the elbows that were stuck on by way of a slit along the palms to make sure they never rippled or looked like gloves. Finally, the head was, I think, a 5-piece makeup so that it could be as close to the actress as possible. You may like to know that in the scene where Chenard embraces and gropes her bottom, that the Chenard hands were actually those of Mr. Nick Vince, and the bum on that day was Little John's own. So, there you go.
Yeah.
And there's a picture. There's actually a picture of Nicholas Vince raising the skirt on the fake Julia, which was actually Little John. And
and it's funny that they said they also said that people were more offended in screenings by him kissing Julia than by that scene.
Yeah,
that part.
Yeah. There were more groans in the cinema on that scene.
Yeah.
But this is fantastic. I mean, of course, it was not Claire Higgins who was underneath the makeup. It was Deborah Joel, a really skinny actress that they got for.
Yeah, and at that Hellraiser reunion in Monster Mania in New Jersey.
New Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, somebody asked Claire. They were trying to hint that it was he was a different person, and they said, like, how come her teeth were different than your teeth, or something like that, and her teeth were so straight and perfect, or something like that, trying to say, like, British people have bad teeth.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and Claire Higgins didn't get it, and just, she sort of made it sound like it was her the whole time.
Oh, okay.
But, whatever.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was
just forgotten in the intervening years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys were at the new Monster Mania reunion, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was not able to stay for the reunion panel.
Yeah, you were there a really short time, right? I didn't even get to meet you then.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. With my little boy and everything, it's been my trips to Monster Mania have generally lasted on the order of 2 to 3 hours, and then I drive back.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, but there you go. That's the detail on the Julia application. I think it's amazing that that scene where Browning cuts himself in the mattress, and then Julia comes out from the mattress with the steaming bloody scene. That's just one of the main highlights of the movie for me.
It is really cool. I mean, it's sort of interesting that, Frank was just torn to tiny little bits, so it took so much more blood to bring him back than it did for Julia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess she came back, she got her skin back in sort of a montage.
That's true, but you did remember that in the ceiling at Chenard's house, you see a lot of corpses up there.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a montage of all the people that they killed to, which is probably, assuming, done in a short amount of time.
It's a cool scene when there's a confrontation between Julia and Kirsty in the attic. That's really cool.
Well, and there's some sort of metaphysical implications of why was Julia even taken away to hell to begin with?
Well, I guess, yeah, that's interesting because Peter Atkins said that he had a problem with Larry being in hell because he thinks that Larry was innocent. It was an innocent victim. On the other hand, Julia was not innocent at all. I mean, she conspired to kill her husband, and she wanted to kill Kirsty.
The hell in Hellraiser is not about whether you're innocent or whether you're guilty. It's about did you open the box?
But I guess she was.
No, did you purposely seek out?
It's about desire. So if Julia truly desired was power.
Well, that's in Hellraiser 2, not in the first one though.
Well, by the end of the first one, it could be argued that her obsession with Frank was probably the cornerstone of the desire that led to her being in hell.
Well, but
she had obsession and desire.
Kirsty opened the box, and they wanted to take her, and she didn't have any desire to be there.
Yeah, but I agree.
Because it's not hands that call us; it's desire.
Yeah,
that's only in Hellraiser 2, though.
That's true. That's true.
I kind of agree with what Johnny said too, because I think Julia, at one point, she knows the whole thing. She knows what Frank is running from. She knows about the box. She knows about the Cenobites. And, she still stays with him. And she was his accessory. She was the person who rescued him, and she actually was involved.
But they're not really about moralizing, right? I mean, they're about if somebody purposely seeks out the box, knowing what they're getting into, and they do the ritual, and they open it, then they're going to get taken away. And it's not like any of Julia's victims that she hit with a hammer, ended up there. At least not that we know of.
But in Hellraiser 1, when Kirsty finds her in bed, she has been chained, but she is holding the box. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That's right. There's one shot of that.
So
did she drag herself over there and do all that when she was dying?
I would say so. I would say she probably dragged herself into bed while she was dying. And
I just thought it was one of those weird things. You know how everything gets all screwed up and fun and crazy when the Cenobites show up? I just figured it was something like that.
Yeah, I would figure it was something like that. Because, for example, in the Hellbound Heart novella, she does manage to drag herself into bed when she's dying and put on her
wedding dress. Yeah.
Well, it turns out that it is the engineer who does that. But the point is that she still manages to survive a little bit. And like Johnny said, maybe it was desire. Maybe she knows that if she solves the box, then the Cenobites will take her and she'll become immortal like Frank. And maybe that could be what happened. And when she comes back in Hellraiser 2, she says at one point to Chenard, "Why do you think I was allowed to come back? It wanted souls and I brought you." So it can be argued also that she comes back almost fully formed in the mattress.
Oh, yeah.
Because Leviathan let her come back,
Yeah, she was sent. And actually, can we talk about that a little bit? Because I kind of, the more I watch Hellraiser 2, the more I feel sorry for the Cenobites.
Yeah.
They're kind of dupes. I mean, like the Tiffany opens the box and they come out and they're like, "Okay, let's get her." And Pinhead's like, "No, stop. Don't take her. Let's go get Chenard. He's the one that really opened the box." Mm-hmm. And then they look and he's gone. And then it turns out Julie is taking him away to hell. So they're like empty-handed. So they're just hanging around waiting with like, well, what do we do now? Oh, there's Kirsty. Maybe we can take her.
I thought they were like
no,
looking,
I guess we can't take her either.
I thought they were like kind of looking for Chenard at that point. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they the hospital sort of gets intertwined with hell.
Just don't forget that Julia's supposed to be an agent of Leviathan by that time.
Well, and that's the whole thing too. Was Leviathan conspiring against them to set them up to die?
I don't think it was. I mean, I'm just saying this as a fan, of course. I'm not.
Yeah.
This take it for what it's worth. I would say that I understand your point. Like, why aren't they all in the same team, like Julia and the Cenobites? But Julia didn't have a very good experience with the Cenobites, right? I mean, she doesn't really like them for what they did to her. So I would expect Julia to have her own agenda and, stay away from the Cenobites because they...
Yeah, her agenda seems pretty much just to be whatever Leviathan tells her to do.
Yeah, like she's trying to get more power. She's trying to become powerful like a princess of hell or something. And then the Cenobites, it is true that they are kind of duped by their own maker because Leviathan at one point decides that Chenard will be a more powerful Cenobite. In fact, it was supposed to be a tentacle coming out directly from Leviathan, attaching itself to Chenard, making him kind of a puppet,
Yeah.
So that's why he's so powerful and he manages to kill the Cenobites.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, I mean, a lot of people complain. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that because a lot of people complain about how easily he kills the Cenobites and Pinhead.
Yeah, but it makes sense if you consider that he's directly attached to Leviathan because that way he can't really fight a god. They're just...
Well, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't see the other Cenobites being able to zap people with their eyes and take away their,
their power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other theory was also that Pinhead and the Cenobites had been weakened because they had lost their faith at that moment.
Yeah. They were just starting to remember being human.
Right. So they were no longer, in Leviathan's grace. So
yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Another theory.
Well, and then that makes me think, and I've kind of always thought this, that maybe Leviathan was plotting against them because it saw ahead that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Could be. I mean, who knows the machinations of a deity's mind? But,
well, she said it wanted souls, so I brought you. And it's like, not only did it want a soul, but it wanted to make this souped-up, super-powered Cenobite.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking over this operation.
Yeah. But basically, I think that if the Cenobites had done nothing when he's trying to take Tiffany, that they wouldn't have died. But
he said, a fight, and all Pinhead did was drop the picture on the floor.
Well, yeah, but they direct his attention to Chenard. I know it's kind of a subtle thing, but there's kind of a defiance thing going on. Then Pinhead draws his little knife. And,
after he's already been changed into a person.
And he goes like, "I'm going to cut you."
He already tried the chains, and it's like, if that didn't work, he's pretty much lost. That's about all he's got.
Yeah, it's pretty much like that. Like, Kirsty weakened them or made them question their faith because at that time they think that they were forever and they were always like this. And she says, no, you weren't. You were human. So they kind of like, oh, yeah, I was human. I remember. And that's when they think, well, maybe I'm just a minion or something. And from that point on, could they return to the same state of obedience to Leviathan that they had? I don't know. So
I don't know either.
They challenge Chenard because I think Pinhead is grateful to Kirsty that she reminds him of his humanity, and that's why he lets them get away.
Yeah, I agree. One more thing, I guess, on that note, can we say that I think that, I would say that I think that Kirsty knows too much?
Oh, yeah.
When she's explaining everything that happened in Hellraiser, there's some stuff that she says that, how did you know that?
Like what? When she's talking to Ronson or Chenard?
Yeah, when she's talking to Ronson and she says, or Chenard, I can't remember which, but she says somehow they must have, it was like during the wedding, somehow they must have, they must have been with each other.
Oh yeah.
Like, really? How'd you know that? And then And then how did she looking at the picture of Elliot Spencer say, "Hey, that's Pinhead"? Because, I mean, when I first saw Hellraiser 2, I didn't see that guy in the Quonset hut and think, "Oh, hey, that's Doug Bradley, that's Pinhead."
Well, yeah.
I mean, I wasn't enough of a fan to
I guess
to
she kind of
put that together.
recognized, well, let's say for the sake of argument, she recognized the traces of his head or something. She recognized the face because basically it's the same person. So
Well, it's a pretty messed up face.
It is a pretty messed up face.
I don't know. I've always been pretty good at picking out actors who've like had a lot of prosthetics on Star Trek and seeing them in other roles in like Law and Order and be like, hey, he played that alien in this episode.
So could you pick out Simon Bamford and say, "Hey, that's Simon Bamford. I recognize him."
No, not in the Butterball. That's true.
No, because Simon Bamford had a mask on that covered his face completely. But you can look at Barbie Wilde's female Cenobite and say, "Hey, that's Barbie Wilde." You know?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can tell she's a different person from Grace Kirby.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I never noticed it when I first saw those movies.
Yeah, but, for the sake of argument, let's say that Kirsty recognizes the face. So that's what makes the picture. As for her knowing about her dad being cheated on by Julia with Frank, I guess that's because she goes into the house on Hellraiser 1, and she finds that she's in cahoots with Frank. So I guess she finds that...
Well, but not only did she know, but she knew that it happened during the wedding. And then they're showing, like, cutscenes from Hellraiser 1 of the wedding.
I think you're actually going a little too far in associating one thing to the other. I think the scenes of the wedding are just meant to show us as a flashback. The only thing that she says is, I don't know when or where, but they must have been together. That's what she says. And then it's true they cut to some parts of the wedding, which were actually shots from the first Hellraiser. They just were never used. But Tony Randall said in the commentary that those pictures of Frank and Kirsty wearing a nice little bow and all that stuff, that was done for Hellraiser 1. They just never used it, which is amazing to me because those images look so much fun.
They could have put it as deleted scenes.
Yeah, I mean, you see Larry kissing Julia, and everybody's in the church and everything, and there's Frank looking all dapper. But I guess you're just saying that because you associated the images to what she was saying, but I don't think she mentions the wedding as being the time when Frank cheated on her dad with Julia.
Okay, but also, also her taking that picture and being able to go to the Cenobites and go, "You were all human once. Remember your pain? Remember your confusion?" Like, really?
I guess she's just pleading out to them. She's just pleading out to them.
I think
Gambit, I think.
Yeah.
It just paid off, but it definitely smacked of desperation, and the circumstances, I guess, called for it.
Yeah.
I guess she...
And, by the way, Ryan, let me just say that when you said, I think we said Kirsty knew too much, I thought you were speaking metaphorically.
Oh.
Yeah. But, that's it. That's a gambit that she plays, and it pays off because she recognizes Pinhead was human, so she assumes naturally that the other Cenobites were also human.
Well, she says a lot of exposition for the point of, advancing the story, like,
of course,
the mattress, you've got to destroy that mattress because Julia died on it so she can come back like Frank. That's the other thing that that was bugging me, is that she said Frank came back, but she had no idea that it was the blood on the floor that brought him back. She just knew that if she brought that she brought men somehow that he could feed on.
Well, I will grant.
But now all of a sudden she knows that the mattress, with Julia's blood on it, is some kind of a key for Julia to come back.
Yeah, I'll grant you that one. That's true. I mean that she wasn't really supposed to know that, so that's a good one.
And I think if it were me, and if I were her, I would be really confused about everything that happened.
Well, she does wake up in a mental hospital.
Well, but I wouldn't be explaining to everybody, okay, this is how hell works.
Yeah. I understand that. It's, hey, it's a horror movie. What are you going to do?
Well, right. I mean, and actually in one interview, Ashley Lawrence said that she didn't like the way her character was in Hellraiser 2 compared to Hellraiser 1. Because in the first movie, she was more she was more stand up to people and fight. And in the second movie, she was like, all confused and I got to find my dad. And
I think that role suffered because of, one, Tiffany, two, Julia being a really strong character, and, three, the story got changed in the middle of the shooting. So
there were so many conflicts in Hellraiser 2, right? I mean, you've got Kirsty versus Julia, Kirsty versus the Cenobites, Kirsty versus Frank, Julia versus Frank, the Cenobites versus Chenard, and Kirsty versus Chenard.
Yeah, and basically that's pretty much it. But it works out for me, I guess. To some point, it works out very well, because it's one of my favorite Hellraisers. In fact, it's probably my favorite Hellraiser.
Well, it's definitely the best sequel.
Yeah,
I would argue.
Yeah, absolutely. I like. To my shame, I really like Hellraiser 3 too, very much.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything shameful about that. I mean, it's a very different type of film, and I guess we'll talk about it next time. But I don't think it was weak. It was different.
It was different. It was much larger in scope and scale. We get much more of Pinhead, which is always a good thing. At least it was until they began oversaturating Hellraiser just being about Pinhead, doing exposition. But I really like that. But Hellbound was supposed to be really different, and there was also supposed to be a scene with Tiffany where she escapes from the mental hospital, and she goes into a carnival circus, and you have two orderlies that go there and try to get her back. And then they kind of just thought, this doesn't work very well. So basically what they did was Chris Figg, Clive Barker, Tony Randell, they just wrote this montage sequence when Tiffany is in hell, which is the part
with the clowns and
with the clowns and this baby with the mouth sewn shut and the mirrors. So I thought that looked that's kind of a weird montage sequence, but I think it works pretty well. It adds to the confusion of hell and how it shapes itself according to your fears and traumas. Yeah.
Well, and that's, that was kind of a brave stance to take, because, I mean, in the Hellbound heart, hell was like after you've been torn apart, you're just stuck looking at the world that you used to be a part of, and you can't go back.
Yeah.
That's what hell was. It wasn't anything like what's in Hellraiser 2. And I think, for a long time, I've always sort of been prejudiced towards anything that's like where somebody's trying to take Clive Barker's work and adapt it to their own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like Hellraiser 2 because it's so much has kind of the same tone and the same feel as the first Hellraiser.
Yeah.
It just expands the story a lot. It's kind of like the Halloween 2 of Hellraiser.
I agree. Yeah, Halloween 2 is also one of my favorite sequels, and it also takes place just a few minutes after the first movie ends.
Yeah.
So
I guess I don't like the fact that they firmly put it in the United States when it was. I think it was more leaning towards England in Hellraiser 1.
Yeah, I think so too. Like we discussed. But here's one thing I need to give a shout out to Catherine Chevalier, because she is in this movie, and we just interviewed her last week. And it was really cool because she plays Tiffany's mom.
Mm-hmm.
The woman that says, "Help me, doctor, help my daughter," and then it's implied that Chenard either killed or did away with Tiffany's mom into the mental institution somewhere, and kept
maybe did some kind of brain surgery on her so that she couldn't talk anymore, or who
something
knows?
Like that. Yeah.
So
and then Tiffany became a ward of the Chenard Institute without
which is pretty brave for them to put her right out there in the open where she could say, hey, when my mom brought me in because I was just doing puzzles all the time, somebody with black gloves came and hauled my mother away. Right there in, Dr. Chenard's office.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sequence that's, stylized, and it's inside hell, so it's, inside her mind, so... it's not a real, it's not meant to be taken literally.
You don't think so?
You don't think
that that's what happened to her mother?
I think that's what happened to her mother, but I don't think that, it was in front of the camera, her face staring, and a hand comes from the side and covers her mouth because I mean that's just supposed to be stylized. It's supposed to give us an idea of what happened.
But I mean, it's still the events that it says took place actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's still brave of them to put her in the regular ward where, it just happens that she's so traumatized that she's not speaking. But what if she did?
I don't know. I mean, it's just, I mean, the only time that she comes out of her, silence is when she basically just says shit when she sees the the Cenobites. But I like the ending of the movie. I mean, it's hard to explain. I mean, I'm wondering why you haven't mentioned the end of the movie yet, because you see all these empty beds and all these flower wreaths, but so how do they explain what happened to the patients, right?
Well, I think it's the thing that they didn't explain what happened to the patients. I think it's kind of an embodiment of what makes Hellraiser 2 one of the strongest entries in the series, is that there were so many aspects of the film that were open to possibilities.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm trying to say, because I'm not trying to sound like I'm complaining about all of these things and saying that they're.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, where did these guys get all of these puzzle boxes? Chenard only had 3 of them
from hell.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I think that's more of an interesting question than a like, oh, give me a break kind of a question.
Yeah. Well, I assume it's from hell. I mean, I assume that at one point you see kind of like the Chenard Institute is kind of transported. It's like the house on Ludovico Street in the first Hellraiser movie. I mean, it's never really said outright, but it's almost like
I think the engineer pushed a shopping cart down the middle of the hospital with puzzle boxes in it and just handed them out to everybody.
Yeah, well, that's actually pretty funny. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of like deleted scene with that.
Well, and it's also there's a lot of stuff that you notice on repeated viewings that. Like I never understood why Chenard died until I really, really got, sort of delved into Clive Barker stuff. And the more I watched it, it's like, oh, that's a tentacle connecting him to Leviathan. So Leviathan just got messed up by the puzzle box. So the tentacle's trying to retract, but he's stuck to the ground and it pulls his head apart.
Yeah.
But, in the past, it was always like, who killed him?
Oh,
what's going on?
I never really had that question. It's more like, okay, everything's getting messed up, and the tentacle is recoiling. Those tentacles are stuck to the ground, so we just got, something had to give. So I imagine it's just a way of, it's just the ending of the movie coming,
For me, I always had assumed that it was because Chenard had overextended. How far Leviathan was willing to let him go.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to seize too much power, so Leviathan just kind of said, well, then screw you, and then yanked his
hand. And that could be. Have you guys noticed the tentacle? I mean, not the obvious thing that what it looks like, but the fact that it's got that little propeller on the inside of it makes it look a lot like the instrument that he uses when he's doing brain surgery.
Yeah, I think.
I assume it was deliberate, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was purposeful, yeah.
But it's subtle. It's not like Hellraiser 3 where they do like, oh, well, you're a DJ, we're going to cram a bunch of CDs in your face.
Yeah, that's one of the worst Cenobites designs that I've ever seen. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, are you a cameraman? Well, here's a camera through your head.
Yeah, I call that one the Borg Cenobite.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of the Borg.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, at one point, I think I also imagined that Leviathan didn't want him to kill Tiffany, and that's why he kind of killed him. Like Jonathan was saying, maybe he overstepped his boundaries. Because what I got the feeling was that Tiffany was very interesting to Leviathan, in that he wanted to turn her into Cenobite. And it wasn't just...
I think so.
It wasn't just Chenard's obsession. It was actually... Leviathan channeling his will through Chenard, because
didn't the little the box thing that they go into to turn into a Cenobite came up and she was getting herded into it at one point.
Yeah, and then it just so happens that Channard, after he's tricked by Kirsty, which also we could also argue that why does Kirsty put on Julia's skin and get her voice, But it's just part of the just part of the suspense.
Well, and Frank got
Larry's voice.
Got Larry's voice as soon as he put on Larry's skin.
Yeah, in the book,
I don't think Kirsty used Julia's voice. When did she? She didn't speak as soon as she had Julia's skin on. I don't think she had lines
when she's stretching
her voice.
Yeah, when she stretches her hand to Tiffany and she says, trust me, and it's Julia's voice. No, it wasn't. It was Julia's voice. Yeah, it's Claire.
I kind of am agreeing with Jonathan. To me, it seemed like it was.
I think it was Kirsty's voice, which is why Tiffany trusted her.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Claire Higgins' voice, because I noticed that yesterday when I was watching it. And, if you guys go and watch it again, you'll find out that it is Claire Higgins' voice. So when she gives the her hand to Tiffany. But anyway,
the trust me sounds like Kirsty to me.
Okay.
Well, I mean, maybe it's subject to interpretation.
Yeah.
I guess
We should ask Ashley Lawrence.
Oh yeah, I mean now she's on Facebook. We can ask her directly. Maybe she would be willing to join us someday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and also Tony Randell is on Facebook. Let's see if we can get him to talk to us sometime. Yeah. That would be great.
And one interesting thing from Hellraiser 1, Doug Bradley had said that there was a scene filmed where the Cenobites sort of retract into these little cells, like these monkish cells that had fetishist writing on them, and they would just wait in there until they were called.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he said that they actually filmed that.
Sure. I mean, that's something I would really like to be able to see. We know that there's always lots of stuff filmed for movies that never makes it to the final cut. Yeah. So, I mean, we know that, for example, for Nightbreed, there was a lot of stuff that never made it to the final cut. And
has anyone ever verified, Ashley Lawrence has said in a couple of commentaries at the house on Ludovico Street that previous owner had poisoned themselves with carbon monoxide in the garage.
Oh, I had no idea about that.
I had not heard that.
She said it in both the Hellraiser and the Hellraiser 2 commentary.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, and Peter Atkins dismissed it like, all these people died when they were filming the
Exorcist.
I don't know. Maybe. Do you think she was just trying to start a rumor, like as a joke?
Well, I would imagine that she probably really heard that at the time of the filming of Hellraiser, but maybe somebody was just messing with her.
Probably. The Hellraiser podcast actually did a visit to the Hellraiser house.
Yeah, I remember that.
Vince. I need to listen to that episode, and maybe we can find out if that particular bit of trivia is mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another weird trivia is they said in the Hellraiser 2 podcast that the actor who played Ronson was the Gold Leader in Star Wars.
I think he was, yes. I remember him being in a Star Wars movie in a fighter. Now I just don't remember which fighter was that.
In the orange uniform with the helmet. I remember that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can just check it out on IMDb really quick.
Another weird Hellraiser 2 thing that just a little subtle ironic thing is when he says I'll go get Dr. Channard and Kirsty says he got a ticket to hell. It's like, well, actually he's got 3 of them.
Yeah, I know. And there's another moment when Kirsty is trying to get out of the hospital and she meets with Kyle, and Kyle has just seen Julia come to life, and he says, it's all true. I got to take you out of here. And she doesn't have her clothes, and he says, oh, just 2 seconds. And he walks out of the room, and he comes back in again. It's like, what did he do?
I was just thinking that, too.
Did he?
Yeah, it's like maybe he needed to get some keys or something. I have no idea.
Did he need to adjust his junk or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and Kyle was Gorman on Aliens, the sort of ineffectual lieutenant that had never gone on any combat drops.
Yeah, William Hope. That's the actor's name, and yes, he was one of the characters that we love to hate.
It's interesting in Hellraiser 2 because it's like in the first Hellraiser, Steve, you never really got, until the very end, you never really knew how ineffectual he was going to be. I mean, you knew that he was kind of around.
Yeah.
But Kyle, it's like there was no pretense that he was useful at all. It was just like as soon as he gets into the action, he's dead.
Yeah, it's true. He meets Julia, and
well, I mean, his role really was to make Kirsty's character seem that much stronger. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, that was really his only purpose, was to basically look weird, so that Kirsty would look that much stronger.
But from the very beginning, he was a sympathetic character because he was like, you know, she's like, they don't believe me, and he's like, well, that doesn't mean you're not telling the truth. So we're supposed to like him right off the bat because he's the only one that, you know, well, I mean, obviously Shenard believes her, but...
It's interesting because I have a few things to mention also about Kyle, which is when Kirsty is in her bedroom and he puts his hand on her shoulder like that, and she jumps, and he says, oh, Jesus, I'm sorry. It's like in the second draft of the script, he says more than that. He says, oh, me of all people should know not to do that. And, of course, because you're in the mental hospital, you don't go around freaking out the mental
sneaking
patient.
up on people.
And when he's giving her the sleeping pills, and that scene where he says, it's only to make you, and then she slams the door and he says, sleep. The second draft had a more funny dialogue there, which was, and let me get that for you. It was supposed to be when Kyle gives Kirsty the pills. He said, anyway, let's concentrate on you for a moment. Want to suck on this for me? And Kirsty looks at him sharply. He's preferring a pill and grinning facetiously. And then Kirsty says, hey, good joke, Kyle. Do you always come on to the mentally ill?
Wow.
So that's in the second draft.
Yeah, that's good that they took that out.
Yeah. And then
that's nobody would be that inappropriate. No,
right.
No doc.
So I think he was meant to be, like you said, he was meant to be this kind of, I think his only role here, like John said, is to make Kirsty look stronger and also find a way of getting Kirsty out of the hospital.
I think that it's a little bit of a logical leap that just based on overhearing the phone conversation about the mattress, like, no, don't bring it to the hospital, bring it to my house.
Yeah, well, they could have shown...
He would go from hearing that to, I'm going to go break into Shenard's house.
Yeah, you know, I mean, he heard something about Kirsty mentioning the mattress and saying that Julia died on the mattress and she can come back like Frank. Yeah. So I guess he was curious, but from there to actually breaking into your own boss's house, it's a long way to go. It's a big leap.
Yeah.
So I agree.
And he uses a screwdriver to pick the lock.
I think that he was put there as a way to show the audience what was going to happen in Shenard's house, but they could have done that just as easily without him there. You know, it's basically just to tell Kirsty that, oh, you were right, everything was true, and let me get you out of the hospital so the story can move on. Because of course, Kirsty would never be able to leave the hospital without Kyle. So there you go.
Well, and also, Tony Randall had said in the commentary, I mean, he talked a long time about how much he hated the scene with Frank, the one that you were talking about where his skin melted off.
Mm-hmm.
He talked a lot about how he felt like it was only in there because it was a remnant of an old script, and it was the only purpose it served was to tie up loose ends from Hellraiser 1, and it didn't advance the Hellraiser 2 story at all. And, I mean, I can kind of see where he's coming from, but at the same time, I always liked it.
I liked it, too. I think it needed to be there, because otherwise, what would happen in hell? I mean, Kirsty would just walk around a few hallways, and then Tiffany would, find the Cenobites, and she would fix that stuff, and everything would disappear. I mean, they had to include Frank and Julia there for some kind of, showdown.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of nice for Julie to say, "Look, I'm not the same person that I was before," and here's your heart.
Exactly. It was just a way of Julie getting even with Frank because he killed her.
Yeah, and he just expected that. Well, I know that you fawn all over me, so yeah, you don't care if I killed you. I mean, I knew you'd come back.
There's also a scene which is not in all the DVD versions, which is in the uncut Hellbound, when Kirsty walks into a door that looks like her old house. And she goes there and she sees pictures of her mother and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And it's not Ludovico Street house. It's her house that she grew up in.
Yeah. So a lot of people might not know about that scene because it's not in all the DVD versions. It's only in the uncut versions.
But it's like blood pours out of the picture frame, and then she looks at the picture again, and it's not her and her mother. It's Julia. And so she drops the picture frame on the dresser, and the dresser falls over, and there's like cockroaches everywhere.
Yeah, I always like that scene because it shows us a picture of Kirsty's mother.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, right. And that's something that we never, no one ever thought of or...
Yeah, at that point.
Never came up before.
Yeah, exactly.
Her mother's dead.
Yeah. That's what Larry says to the moving man. Which is funny because at the end of Hellbound, the moving guys... Okay, at least Oliver Parker is still a moving guy. He was a moving man in Hellraiser 1, and he's a moving man in Hellraiser 2.
Yeah.
And,
that's kind of cool.
That's kind of a cool thing. It's kind of a...
Although now he's dead, so he'll never be a moving man again.
Yeah.
After Hellraiser 2, he got eaten up by the
match.
By... I guess it was Julia, right? Julia pulled him in, and then the pillar came out.
Yes, and I have a picture of Julia with a black dress, which was how she was supposed to come out of the mattress at the end. At the end, she was supposed to come out of the mattress instead of the torture pillar. And she would emerge from the mattress wearing a black version of the dress that she had, and she would look at the moving man and say, "I'm Julia, love me," and then she would throw her head back, and the black light of Leviathan would come out from her mouth and fill the screen with darkness, and that would be the end. Because that would be the introduction of the new villain of the series, which would be Julia. Of course, that didn't happen.
Yeah, for a few reasons.
Yeah. But that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll add that picture of Julia with the black dress to the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do we have anything more to say about Hellraiser 1 or 2?
I have a quick thing. I'm just wondering, and this may be kind of an obvious question, but do you guys think that had Claire Higgins returned, the character of Angelique in Hellraiser 4 might have been different, or possibly the characteristics of Angelique that were so similar to Julia might have been written into a version of Hellraiser 3?
I think that if Julia had come back, and she would become like a villainess of the series, probably the whole direction of the series would have been very different. Maybe Pinhead wouldn't even show up as much, or at all. I mean, really, they died, right? Yeah. I mean, and they died mainly because in the script, when the script was written, they didn't really take into account how much people responded to Pinhead. Yeah.
So they were supposed to be dead.
But I think I understand.
And then when they corrected that by making the pillar.
Yeah. I think I understand to some point what you're trying to ask me, John, which is Angelique was at one point the princess of Hell, and then we're told that Pinhead has become the Black Pope of Hell. Yeah. So maybe Julia would become like a queen of Hell.
And she was Angelique was supposed to be like a demon in the traditional sort of Christian hell, right? And Pinhead is sort of saying, oh well, hell's a different place now from the way it was when you were there.
Well, have you ever read the draft of the script for Hellraiser Bloodline? Because I think what he's trying to say when he says it's much more ordered and much less amusing, Pinhead is referring to the fact that Angelique had hellish clowns, and dancers, and like mimes and stuff from hell, because there are missing scenes in Bloodline that were never shot, which were from the original drafts, which involve Angelique showing up. At least her troupe of demonic clowns showing up. Right. And they're like dancing and doing kind of a theater, and then they open up some curtains, and there's a giant mouth of hell that eats one of Le Marchand's friends, Auguste, which was the guy who was the surgeon. And I think that he meant that as a throwback to the fact that when Angelique was running Hell, it was more of a dark circus kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of a bold way to go because, I mean, the Cenobites are all about torture and order and the war against the flesh and to have like crazy clowns running around. It seems.
I wonder if, of course, this is another speculation. I wonder if Hell changes as that cycle ends and a new cycle begins. If it changes, like when Leviathan takes over a new host or when he appoints a new lead Cenobite, that the personality of the person being chosen would influence the new Hell. You know?
So Chenard's Hell would have been like a hospital full of people that he can do fun.
Sure. Like Pinhead was a military officer, so you get like military efficiency. You get like hierarchy and stuff like that. And maybe with Angelique, it was like a dark circus. Who knows?
Well, I mean, he was credited as the lead Cenobite, just I think only in Hellraiser 1, only because he talked the most.
Sure. Yeah.
And in Hellraiser 2, he actually orders them around. He's like, no, wait, stop.
True. I mean, in the first one, they were all supposed to be equals. And then, of course, with the second one, he becomes a much more regal presence. His introduction.
And he instead of getting teleported in, he walks in from a hallway.
Yeah. And, they all walk in through a hallway in Hellraiser 2. But then on Hellraiser 3, we really they really started pumping up Pinhead to be the Black Pope of Hell, the main villain, and of course, then the comic books and the Books of the Damned and the epic Marvel comics, they really fleshed out that whole theory that Pinhead is like a Black Pope of Hell. He runs over the Order of the Gash.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what I got from all these things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
What did you get from all that stuff, Johnny?
Well, I'm sorry, I was thinking that it was kind of ironic that Pinhead refers to Hell as more ordered in Hellraiser 4, considering all the infighting between, like, Julia Chenard and his Cenobites in Hellraiser 2. So, much more ordered.
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with him being kind of the Black Pope of Hell in Hellraiser 3, and again, I suppose we'll discuss this later, mainly because he was kind of the kind of like a lone agent up until Terry Farrell's character, Joey, stabs him with the box at the end, I thought. I thought everything he did in 3 was pretty much on his own, kind of like he had lost his way.
You know what? You're absolutely right, because he's an outcast in Hellraiser 3.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah. He's an outcast. He finds himself trapped in our world. So yeah, you're right. You're right. Absolutely.
I mean, we can talk about this.
Sure.
In the next episode. So.
Oh yeah. So
that's great.
Yeah. So are you gonna want to join us again for the next episodes?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome.
We should probably talk about scheduling.
Yeah. I mean, we record every couple of weeks, and so probably 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So at some point, we're a lot more flexible now that José's not in Portugal because of the time differences. We're only an hour apart.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's perfect then.
I will try to find some nice blocks of time that would work.
Okay.
Awesome.
So we do have some.
2 weeks from now, I should look for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have some feedback. That remember before that guy from Horror Etc. podcast said we should listen to their podcasts on Hellraiser. So I did. I really liked a lot of the stuff that they talked about. I think that there was one thing where they said the Lament configuration, they said that name didn't come up until like one of the sequels. I'm pretty sure that came from Hellbound Heart, right?
I don't think it's in the Hellbound Heart. Let me check real quick. Hang on. I think that was more from the movies and the comic books. I remember that the Lament configuration is in Hellbound. No, wait, Hellraiser 4 Bloodline, I mean.
In 4, definitely.
Yeah, in 4, definitely. As for the other movies, I don't remember that. I can do a quick search on my digital version of Hellbound Heart.
Okay.
And see.
Yeah, just
I think they refer to it more as the Le Marchand configuration in the novella.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me look. Lament configuration. It is not found inside the Hellbound Heart, the Lament configuration string.
Okay.
So it's not from the novella.
Wasn't the Screamin' brand model, labeled the Limit configuration?
That's a good question.
Because that was from years before.
Yeah.
Or does it say Hellraiser box?
Maybe it just said Hellraiser box. I don't know. It's been so long.
It is. That was like one of the oldest. That was one of the oldest things to have come out, along with the Screaming models.
Yeah.
I was trying to find a picture of the packaging of the Screaming Lament configuration that I could see, but
it's like a little baggie with a cardboard thing about it.
No, it's simply called Hellraiser Mystery Box.
Mystery box.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll say.
Actual Hellraiser.
Good job, guys.
Yeah. That's what we call it. That's the mystery box. Oh, no.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, but I really enjoy the whole design of Chenard. It's really one of my favorite Cenobites, and paradoxically, it's still the one Cenobite that I do not have any kind of model or action figure or anything. So I need to get that one day.
Which one?
Chenard.
Oh.
Yeah, I never got that NECA model from Chenard, and I regret that to this day because now when you look for it, it's really, really expensive. But there is a statue.
It's good. The only problem with the NECA Chenard is that the base that holds the tentacle, so that he dangles from the tentacle.
Yeah.
It tends to droop a lot, and that's not a euphemism. I mean, the tentacle tends to droop.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess they should have made a more durable, a more stiff tentacle, a heavier base to that, I guess. But there is actually a statue. There is actually a big statue of Chenard also. Like there was a big statue of Pinhead made in ceramic resin.
Right.
So, but it costs like hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
I remember when that Pinhead was new.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
back then I didn't have any money.
Yeah, well, join the club. I also just got like half a dozen of NECA figurines, and they're always figurines from the first two movies. I never really got into the other ones, so
yeah,
I guess.
So Steve Dillon says, "I'd love to know at what point Pinhead became such a major focus when he was just a bit player in the book." Well, and I think we kind of have covered this, but basically the reaction to Hellraiser sort of drove the direction of all future Hellraiser movies, right? He wasn't such a major player in Hellraiser, except that his costume allowed him to speak more than like Nicholas or Simon.
Yeah, they couldn't speak at all, so I would say so. And then of course, Hellbound was probably the first movie that really started cementing that Pinhead was a more outstanding Cenobite than the others because he
but ironically, then they murdered him.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but I would say Hellbound.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was they were in the middle of developing Hellraiser 2 when they found out that people loved Pinhead, and actually were calling him Pinhead.
Absolutely, yeah. That was supposed to be the nicknames, right? I mean, there was a Chattering Cenobite. There was Butterball was a nickname on set. Deep Throat was another nickname on set for the female Cenobites. And Pinhead was the nickname of Doug Bradley's Cenobites.
Yeah.
So it just kind of stuck there. I don't know why. Maybe it was, when the articles started to come out with Fangorias and all that stuff, maybe they started referring them to Pinhead, and that's what it, eventually made it to the credits,
Yeah, and he went on to say where he wants to know where the inspiration for the cube design came from, as it was just a mirrored surfaces in the book, and how the cube and Leviathan are linked. Well, geez, now we need to write a book, he said. So, I guess that's really a two-part question.
Yeah.
Right? In the Hellraiser 1, Leviathan wasn't ever even imagined during, when Hellraiser 1 was being developed.
Sure.
So, I mean, I would say that a black cube is not very interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a black shiny cube would not be that interesting visually. I'm really happy that they got the design for the box because it's really pretty. It was designed by a jeweler and special effects guy called Simon Sacy.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother Warwick Sacy was a part of Image Animation too. So yeah, that's the guy who came up with the box. And
and I would say when Clive was developing Hellraiser, he wasn't exactly, he wasn't 100% against anything that was different from the novella. I mean, he considers the movie to be a different thing. Like Kirsty is Larry's daughter. Larry isn't called Rory.
Yeah. So he himself he changed the dynamics of some of those things himself, and he changed those details himself because he wrote the script. He adapted the novella, so he didn't want to make it just like the book, I guess.
And also if it was just a plain black box, how would people? I mean, you wouldn't be able to see them touching things and moving parts, and you wouldn't really know what you're looking at, or they would fake what they're they would maybe be faking what they're doing when they're pushing in a button. But
that's kind of like the point with it being a black box in the novella. It's to make it harder to open. I mean, you can't see the different parts that make it because it's been polished. And
Kirsty only was able to open it because their blood got into one of the grooves.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought it was a really cool thing that they changed. It was one of the things that was definitely a good change from the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we want to talk about the engineer in Hellraiser 1, I guess? I mean, we were sort of backpedaling, but...
Well, the engineer was played by Little John Cormican as well. He was the guy pushing the cart that had the engineer.
Yeah, and it was he was sort of standing on a platform and sticking his head out through, or like operating the arms, I think.
Yes, operating the arms, because the arms was what we see as back legs that are pushing the model forward on wheels.
And the head would have been like a puppetry kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's what you get when you get also HD versions, is that you can see everything. You can see all the cables, you can see all the things.
And you can see the wheel rig behind it. Yeah.
God, yeah.
But I love I still love the engineer. I mean, I'm a sucker for monsters. I love monsters.
Yeah, I wish we could have seen more of the engineer in Hellbound.
Well, I like when it punched Steve in the face.
Did you know that the engineer was actually supposed to be in a few scenes in Hellbound? Because yes, I have some pictures. I will share them on the Hellraiser official page afterwards. There are some pictures taken of the engineer holding up Julia's skin, like discovering Julia's skin, and like actually there was some
same skin that Tiffany finds.
Yes. And he looked slightly different. Like his face looked more refined, a little more monstrous. The eyes were, I have to fish out that picture, and I'll share it with you guys later. I'll email it to you guys, and we can add it to the show notes as well. I don't know why they didn't include those scenes with the engineer, because that would have been cool.
Yeah. I mean, and they've already got him. I mean, it's not like they had to. I mean, if they already had him, then they don't have to pay money to build him again.
I don't know. I guess it might have been on some of those scenes where they got cut or some things.
There's a lot of stuff cut. Like there's in one of the trailers, there's the chattering Cenobite Chatterer 2 is running down the hallway at them, and they get into an elevator, and the doors close like right before he gets his face in there.
Yeah, and it was supposed to cut his fingers because his fingers were supposed to get caught in the door. And then you would just see his fingers cut. That would be one of the scenes when they come back into the hospital, Kirsty and Tiffany and Larry, and they're trying to save Larry. And
and also this is a shout out to Nicholas Vince because we know he listens.
Mm-hmm.
So we love the Chatterer and the Chatterer 2. And there's I guess it's kind of a famous story about him getting hooked on the...
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that scene when there's a showdown between the Cenobites and Chenard. There's like that room with the swinging hooks and the torture pillar. One of the hooks went straight into his mouth and hooked into the roof of his mouth.
Yeah.
And he got caught, he got hooked, and apparently they still managed to do a few more scenes after that, but they had to stop everything and get him some first aids because that could have been really, really bad.
Yeah, geez, and it was like a huge hook.
And we do get to see the Chatter have eyes in Hellbound, even though he doesn't begin the movie with the new look. At one point, when he shows up again, he does have eyes, and his face is different.
And there was a cut scene where he transformed from one to the other.
Yes.
Like something peeled off the eye skin or something like that, and then he had eyes underneath.
Was that filmed?
No, that wasn't filmed. But there was supposed to be a scene where let me find that stuff.
I thought it was filmed. I thought that they said that it was filmed, but it didn't make it into the movie. I don't know. I don't know.
I have this FAQ from Hellraiser which says Chatterer and Chatterer 2, what's the difference? And then it explains that an unfilmed part in the corridors of Hell shows Chatterer in Hell's equivalent of a beauty salon being remade. This involves the scar tissue being manually peeled from the upper part of his face to reveal small, vicious human eyes. The differences are noticeable, though. Hellraiser, Chatterer, no ears, hooks around cheeks, and Chatterer 2 from Hellbound, ears, no hooks around cheeks. So there you go. That's the difference, yeah. Yeah, it always bugged me that Chatterer didn't have ears, especially in the...
the first one?
No, that bust that came out from NECA. There was a big, huge bust, a big, heavy bust of Chatterer, where they use a simplified version of the makeup. I think it's supposed to be what they call Chatterer 3, which is the Chatterer that appears in, which was that sequel? Inferno or something?
Is that the one where he's a torso?
Yeah.
With no legs?
Okay, yeah. So I'm thinking about Hellseeker then. Hellseeker has a Chatterer Cenobite, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch it again when it's time for that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, it always bugged me that he didn't have ears because when I looked at the NECA bust for the Chatterer, he doesn't have ears, but it's not like they've been cut off. He simply does not have ears. His head is smooth on that side. So I'm like,
his head is so mangled.
Yeah, but there you go.
Yeah. Okay, well, and then how the Cube and Leviathan are linked. I mean, Leviathan looks like a big cube that's turned into the pyramid shape. I'm not, I don't really know. In the new comic books, they're saying that Leviathan is kind of a spirit inside of that, and that's like a shell that he lives inside of.
Yeah.
But that's the comic books. I mean, the reality of the movies could be something totally different.
Well, when you get into the comics, and I know I keep going back to the comics because there was this document that was made by Clive Barker, Daniel Chichester, Archie Goodwin, which was the editor of Marvel. They came up with a series of concepts and guidelines for the Epic Comics horror anthology series, Clive Barker's Hellraiser. And in that document, there is a line that states that Leviathan formed from his own flesh the material that will be fashioned by ordinary men into the puzzle keys to the kingdom of hell. It can send its puzzles anywhere, to any reality in any world. An alien being on another planet can pick up one of Leviathan's puzzle boxes just as easily as the neighbor across the street. And so it said that it made like 10,000 boxes and scattered them across the universe or something like that. So this is the document that was the guidelines for the comic book series in the 90s. And
so from there, that thing actually is Leviathan.
Yes. And
I like that idea better because I like to think that we don't have to look at something and make sense out of it.
Yeah. So like it says here, the Leviathan sends out its boxes and puzzles to entice others to give their souls to the Escher-like world within himself. Anybody can feed Leviathan's desire. The only criteria for succumbing to its ruse is the simple curiosity to solve the puzzle and the simple desire to work at it until it is solved. So there you go. And then it goes into the war on flesh that Leviathan did and all that stuff. It's a really interesting document. I'll email it to you guys. We can add it to the show notes as well.
Thanks.
Cool.
There you go.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Just one. I mean, this Bob Dobbs says not to bitch about something free, but please do something about the echo.
Oh.
So I've noticed an echo when I'm editing, a little bit of an echo, and I don't know if it's the room that because I'm in like a little nook, and I've got sheetrock all around me on 3 sides, and I don't know if that's what the echo is, or if it's because my voice is coming through Skype and from my microphone. So I'm not really 100% sure.
Well, we'll figure it out. I'm using headphones and microphones, so it's not a band. That's just a technical thing.
Yeah.
I'm actually recording the episode myself, so we can see if with my recording it can be better.
Yeah, maybe so.
Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's about it. Unless, Jonathan, did you have anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
I do want to say thank you for letting me join you guys.
All right. It was great to talk to you again.
Yeah.
I know things have been pretty hectic and stuff, so it's nice when you can come on and talk about Clive Barker stuff.
Very grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
It's always great to have guests. And all right, so looking forward to being able to talk about other movies with you.
Yeah. So that was episode 38 of the Clive Barker podcast with Jose Leitao, and I'm Ryan Danhauser, and our guest was Jonathan Kui. You can reach us on the website at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave a review on iTunes, or you can subscribe to us there. You can find our page on Facebook or the Occupy Midian group. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian. The forum is www.clivebarkerfans.com/forum, and the theme song was by Colin Lakativa. Hello, this is Ryan again. In the original airing of this episode, we had the song Lost and Found by Kronos right here. In order to respect the rights holders, we've removed it from this episode, and I recommend you find Lost and Found by Kronos. It's on the Hell to the Unknown album, and give it a listen. Thanks for understanding. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.